Okay, folks, can you hear us now? Can someone please chat or type in the chat box? Yes, thank you, Brenda.
Oh, good.
Excellent. Has anyone heard anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We're gonna
thank you so much,
back up, and we'll start right from the beginning again. I'm very sorry.
Our apologies.
Okay. Hopefully that was our only hiccup this morning. Again, welcome back to the 5th of the 5 webinars in the series to support the West Virginia Leaders of Literacy campaign for grade level reading. I'm Charlotte Webb. I'm the coordinator of elementary education and the point of contact for the campaign for grade level reading. I'm here with my colleague, Monica Delamay, lead coordinator in the Office of Early Learning.
Good morning.
As always, we're honored that you've come back to join us again for the 4th step in establishing the county campaign for grade level reading. As we proceed, you'll notice that all participants are muted, even us there for a minute. But if you have questions as we move through the information, feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll stop periodically to answer. The webinar is scheduled for an hour, and at the end of the presentation, we'll again open it up for questions then as well. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on the campaign website for your use following this session. My goals for this session are to review the 3 main topics of the campaign and the associated toolkits. School readiness, attendance, extended learning, and then we'll review the next steps of action as we move forward. So what is this implementation phase? Well, in some ways, it's the final phase of the campaign that we've talked about in the steps, but in reality, it's the beginning of the work. So during this phase, you'll be able to take the information that you've gleaned from your needs assessment, mobilize the resources and partners that you've identified during the community engagement, and begin to get boots on the ground to implement your county's plan of action. This is the time that you'll begin to systematically and intentionally monitor one thing, and that is the needle moving? So any program, initiative, partnership, or plan that you put into action demonstrate that it has the potential and the capacity to move the needle. In some instances, though, you've got to remember this won't show up in the 3rd or 4th grade test data for some time. However, you're going to have some way to measure efficacy. For example, instead of test data, you may choose to look at numbers of families or children participating or being served by programs. You may have a goal of increasing the duration of a program or initiative. There are numerous ways to measure, but you have to look at your goals and your ongoing data tenaciously. I think it's evident that's why you're going to need a team to support this work. You may have many organizations or initiatives in place. You may have a county library establishing a goal of doubling the number of books lent during the summer, while at the same time another goal of your campaign would be to increase the number of hours of reading and literacy professional learning received by teachers. But if the data is not being monitored, it's not very likely that you're going to see any movement forward.
Okay, now we're going to actually delve into the components of the campaign. And this is Monica. I'm going to take you through some of the information about school readiness. So Charlotte, can you click on that link, please? The school readiness link takes you to readysetgo.com or .gov. If you were to type that address in, you'd get to our Ready, Set, Go West Virginia School Readiness webpage. Many of you are likely familiar with this already. It is the framework that establishes the parameters for supporting children and families as they come into our early learning readiness grades of universal pre-K as well as kindergarten. So as you're looking at implementation, as you're completing your plan and this whole process, I do want to reference a few resources. And one of them is the School Readiness Transitions Toolkit. click on it. And in this toolkit, you'll find several things, but first and foremost, you'll find what is Ready, Set, Go, West Virginia. If you think about this comprehensive approach to early literacy that we've been focusing on and telling you about, and then it'll be time for you to spread your wings as a county team and move forward with your plan. If you look at it through the context of school readiness and how to support children and families, it's really so much bigger than one person. So everything is looking through the lens of the child being the center of everything, then supporting families, Ready families, who are supported by Ready schools and programs, which are supported by a Ready state and community. We know in West Virginia it's not, is my child ready for school? Instead, it is the school, is the program ready to support the children and their family into and out of these transitions. And on the next page, you'll find the formal definition that was adopted by the State Board of Education. This is in Policy 2525, which is the Universal Pre-K policy. We know that school readiness just isn't about the academics. We know that it's a holistic approach to young children. We also know that school readiness looks at the status not only of children as they come to kindergarten, but also looks at that kindergarten year as well, prior to first grade entry. And I believe many of you are aware of that now. Due to policy changes that establish programmatic units, Policy 2510 established that the programmatic unit for early learning grades last year, and so we now have early learning readiness grades of pre-K and K. So with that in mind, the definition is there, and you'll find some more in-depth information about the Ready state and community, Ready schools and programs, Ready families, Ready children, and what they deserve as far as the transition process. Also, understanding transitions. If you've not seen this before, I would encourage you to look at the different localities in which children are typically coming to pre-K or kindergarten from. And then we have resources. And then the toolkit itself for supporting transitions actually has several different types of activities, along with potential experiences that may go along with that activity and what's applicable to your county early literacy team. Now, when I say this, we all know that every county already has a collaborative early childhood team. We've talked about that in other webinars, and many of you who are on here today are part of your early childhood collaborative teams, your county teams. We're not saying to reinvent the wheel with this. There's no need for the early literacy team to go do separate activities than what this early childhood collaborative team is doing. So it's important that you talk to each other. It's important that you communicate, and in many cases, sometimes the county may determine that those teams have those same goals and are working toward that same process. So it may include, the early childhood collaborative team may morph into the early literacy team or vice versa. So keep that in mind. There are several activities. I won't go through all of them. There are potential experiences to support the activities as well as a suggested timeline on there. Also on this page is the school readiness profile, and the 2013 profile is currently up, but I do want to let everyone know that we're hoping for next week's superintendent's update to include the link to the 2014 school readiness profile, and hopefully it'll be available online. We will let you all know as well when it's online, because as you're working on your plans, you'll be able to get the most recent data that way as well. So after we finish the webinar, I'd be happy to answer more questions about school readiness. I would also be happy to talk with you about it more in depth at a later time. So Charlotte, give it back to you.
Okay, and just a reminder, a link to that toolkit, the School Readiness Transitions Toolkit, will also be on the campaign's website. Okay, Moving on to the next component of the campaign is attendance. For children to succeed in school and learn to read well by the end of 3rd grade, of course, they're going to need to be present at school. Yet nationwide, 1 in 10 kindergarten students misses a month of school every year. There was a study in 2008 that shows that chronic absence in kindergarten can translate into poor academic performance throughout elementary school, especially for children in poverty whose families lack the resources to make up for lost time in the classroom. Promoting attendance in the early grades is critical to sustaining the school readiness skills that a preschool or Head Start program can help children to develop. When chronic absence was not taken into account, students who arrived at school academically ready to learn, but then missed 10% of their kindergarten and 1st grade years, scored on average 60 points below similar students with good attendance on their 3rd grade reading test. Now in math, the gap was even more. It was nearly 100 points. While chronic absence rates are higher and more intractable in secondary school, it's really crucial to start addressing those problems among our youngest students before they slip off track academically and poor attendance habits become entrenched. To ensure all children have a chance to learn, we must emphasize the importance of attendance early and often throughout their school careers. Reducing chronic absence is especially important for children living in poverty, who need as much time as possible in a literacy-rich, engaging learning environment during the early years to set them on a path toward academic success and that 3rd grade reading proficiency. Unfortunately, for those children, they are 4 times more likely to be chronically absent than their more affluent peers. After all, families struggling in poverty are more likely to face a web of problems that can stand in the way of good school attendance. Some of those problems can include inadequate transportation, unstable housing, lack of health care, higher incidence of chronic absence, and poor nutrition and safety concerns. Also, schools in higher poverty neighborhoods are often not as educationally engaging as other campuses, which is another factor influencing whether a child attends regularly. When school and district leaders can understand what barriers students are facing, then you have an opportunity to marshal community resources to address them, whether by redirecting healthcare assets for asthma sufferers, creating safer walking routes to school, or supporting policy change. Most schools only track truancy, or average daily attendance. Now, let me just caution you that a lot of times these figures can mask the often significant numbers of students that are missing 10% or more of the school year. The common definition of chronic absence. Chronic absence is a problem that we can fix if we start early enough. Schools and communities can see attendance rates improve within months when they work together to monitor the chronic absence data and reach out to children and families to encourage good attendance and help them overcome barriers of getting to school. One thing I wanted to add to this is recently several of us had an opportunity to review some action plans from other communities throughout the nation. And I noticed that in one of them, one of the strategies they were using were to provide incentives for children that were chronically absent. And I really had I don't know, something about that made me uneasy because a lot of times for those children, it's out of their control. If they have parents who are oversleeping or they don't have adequate transportation if the bus is missed, or, you know, so I want you to just think through, when you think through about how to address chronic absence versus truancy, where does that incentive need to lie? You know, if it's out of the children's control, then to not get that incentive is almost like a punishment. So just think through about how to most adequately address issues that your children that are chronically absent are facing. So school districts can partner with community leaders using these strategies. Be sure to get and share and monitor chronic absence data. make student attendance a community priority, nurture a culture of attendance, identify and address barriers to school attendance, advocate for stronger policies and public investment. You will find out more information about each of these areas in the attendance toolkit that will be on the campaign website. When counties can reduce chronic absence, they can improve student achievement. But the benefits of good attendance extend far beyond just those academic gains. It means students are engaged in school and developing a sense of persistence that's going to serve them well past their school years. It means teachers can teach to full classrooms without having to slow down for students who miss too much school. It even means lower crime rates and higher graduation rates, which in turn means fuller employment and better local economies. Improved attendance is a simple concept that everyone in the community can grasp and muster behind. Okay, the next component we're going to look at is extended learning. Now, before we get into the specifics of that and summer learning loss, I want to share a little research with you. If you're familiar with John Hattie's work, he's a professor at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. He's conducted 20 years of research studying the typical effect sizes across over 800 meta-analyses, 50,000 studies, and over 200 million students, ages 4 to 20. So what that means is he doesn't actually do the studies. What he does is he collects all the studies on a given topic, and he determines the effect size or the amount of change that is produced by the topic being studied. One thing he points out about research is the fallacy of using the 0 point to determine an increase in student achievement. You can see from the graph that the distribution on effects across a study, and Hattie points out that in education, the problem with our data is that we measure from the 0 point. When starting from that 0 point, there's practically nothing that we can do that won't show growth because we're dealing with human beings. During the school year, as they get older, they gain more experiences, and they're going to show growth in achievement by virtue of those facts alone. But Hattie says that in order to close the achievement gap, we have to engage children in activities that cause more growth than would normally be made in a year. Therefore, anything that is used, it has to be at a 0.4 effect size or greater. But now here's where this gets interesting. There are only a few things that actually cause our children to lose ground in their achievement, and Hattie refers to those as the disasters. And here they are: mobility. I think we're familiar with that, parents aren't able to pay rent, or there's a mom and dad breakup, and children have to move and shift schools. Retention, television, and summer vacation. Now, I'm sure that none of those are a surprise to anyone. So what's the answer to that? Well, summer school, of course, except look at this effect size. Now, we just said that it needed to be a 0.4 or more. So here we've got an effect size of 0.23. Now, that is not an effect size that's going to close the achievement gap. However, it's difficult to ignore even these small gains if they're critical to students who may already be marginal. But one of the reasons is that a typical summer learning opportunity rarely offers the intensity and duration required to support those significant learning gains. However, I want to highlight this to make a point. Summer school programs will not be the answer to closing the achievement gap for your low-income children. So as you analyze the data of your needs assessment and you start creating your action plan, it's so important that you carefully consider all of your options. You're not going to be able to accomplish the goal if you're going to sink all of your resources into summer learning. What about during the year learning or extended day learning? What about offering summer camps rather than summer school and giving those rich experiences? I would encourage you to look at this research for yourself. I've mentioned John Hattie's work on student achievement, but he's not the only one. There are a lot of others in the field that do the same type of work. But it's going to be important that you know what works overall and what will work in your county. So let me give you some examples of things that do offer high probability that will increase student achievement. Look at that, acceleration. We typically think of acceleration in terms of those bright students, but acceleration works with all students. So when you give even those underperforming students an opportunity to accelerate, you can see great gains in student achievement. Reciprocal teaching. Look at that third one, teacher-student relationships. What if you spend time just helping teachers know how to develop honoring relationships with their students that honor the student as the whole person, and just developing those strong relationships? You know, that's a very valid way to use your resources. Vocabulary programs, repeated reading programs which support fluency, professional development, professional learning, not labeling students, phonics instruction, outdoor and adventure programs, and parental involvement. Now, when we look at that last one, that parental involvement, again, I'm sure that's no surprise to us as educators, but listen to what the descriptor is behind it. When children start to school, 98% of parents consider that education is very or extremely important to their child's future. 2/3 of these parents expect their children to attain diplomas or degrees. Now that's when they come to school. But by the time the children leave elementary school, these aspirations are doused. And the parents mainly want their children to get a job. Parental involvement really has nothing to do with supervising homework, attending school activities. The parental involvement that creates that 0.51 effect size has to do with what parents believe about their children. And schools have a significant impact on those beliefs. So, you know, what if we use our resources to support just sharing with parents good news and how to support their children? And, you know, because I know when I was in the classroom, I was often guilty. You know, my first contact with a parent would be like, there's a problem. And it goes to develop what parents believe about their children and ultimately what children believe about themselves. So back to extended learning, the last thing I want to share with you are just some considerations as you plan extended learning experiences. Like I mentioned before, your interventions do not have to only take place in the summer. Your interventions don't have to be purely academic. They can include recreation, enrichment, relationship building activities. Keep in mind that part of the reason for the gap in student achievement of low-income children is the fact they don't have access to those rich experiences, resources, and conversations that other children get. So imagine, if you will, an extended learning that immerses students in a topic by reading large volumes of text about the topic and allows for experiential learning of this topic as well. What if you offer a farming camp or a camp on electricity or a history club that meets after school or on the weekend? The possibilities are really endless, but again, going back to what we talked about with attendance, you'll have to make sure that there's transportation in place, that children aren't going to encounter those same obstacles that they have with attendance to begin with. If you're going to offer summer learning opportunities, make sure that they are of sufficient intensity and duration. The recommendation is that they be 6 to 8 hours per day, 5 days a week, and for a minimum of 6 weeks. I know a lot of times summer schools will run for 2 weeks, and it's just not going to give you the change that you're looking for with student achievement. Okay, next let's take a look at action steps. This is the final webinar in the series, but I want to just encourage you and let you know that this is not the end of the support that we want to offer you as you begin your work on implementation. So some action steps, again, I know this kind of goes without being said, but are to complete those steps 1 through 3. Your community engagement is so critical to seeing that this is going to work out. Completing that needs assessment, where are the gaps in your county, and where are you going to need resources and partners to come alongside you to bridge those gaps. And then coming up with your plan of action. So as you utilize the knowledge and expertise of your partners, deciding, what is the best way to meet this initiative, and as we try to walk out the implementation process. Utilize those resources that are provided on the website. And 3, ask for help. Anything that you need, that is why we're here. And I know that some of you have already put me to the test on that. And I think that you can attest to, if you call me and I'm not able to take it right then, I will always return your call just as quickly as possible, because I want you to know that you do have support that is available to you. We've also been talking here about what kinds of future opportunities to offer. We do have plans for ongoing communication with the county leads. I am excited to report that I do have points of contact in all but, I think, 5 counties. So I do have a way to get messaging to you about what resources are available and what support that we're offering across the state. But again, you always do have opportunities for individual help with your own county. We're not certain how this will look yet. I know we've thrown around the idea of maybe conference calls that would happen regularly and give you an opportunity to engage with counties maybe that are, have really come up with some ideas that are working, that they're seeing a lot of success. And so giving you an opportunity to hear some of their celebrations about what's working in their county. I do promise you that the specifics will be shared with you just as soon as those details are finalized. Here are some reminders. Your action plans are due June 1st. You're going to need to create a budget to accompany your action plans. What will happen is once you turn those in, then your plans will be reviewed by a team and additional support will be provided as needed. Even though any monies that may become available will be distributed by formula funding, the action plan is going to have to demonstrate that it's based on the data in the needs assessment. And again, we're here to help. I'm going to take a minute and open it up for questions. All right, hang on just a second. We have a...
Okay, we have a question. Do you have any more information on funding from the State Department? We actually have, I know we mentioned last time, a line item in the governor's budget for the coming school year. And I believe that the governor's budget is pending final approval now that the legislative session is completed. So as soon as that funding is announced, we will let you know. I would hope that the funding would certainly come through, though we do know that at the the 11th hour something could always happen. That's why we're not saying that it's guaranteed. If we are funded, it would not be for the amount of the critical skills funding. We had asked for that, but we believe it would probably be around $5.7 million a year. That's what the line item is in the governor's budget. Critical skills was funded at $6.2 million per year. So we would be looking at, $500,000 less to go around. That was another question that was addressed here. Here's the question: is there a sample template for the action plan, or can we create our own? There actually is a sample template. If you look at the plan, Charlotte, do you want to talk about that?
Right. There, when you go to the website, and I'll show you again how to get there, there's not a specific template, because again, I want to remind you, we feel like our role is to support your work. So when you look at the action plan, under each section there's a list of guiding questions. We wanted to help you think through at just as many aspects and details as you could to make sure that you've thought through all the possibilities, all the different angles where you might need help or support. So what we would recommend you do is just in a Word document, you can use those guiding questions as part of your template, but you can create that to look like what's going to work best for you. So there's not anything specific, as far as a template you have to turn into us, other than it has to cover all those parts of the action plan that, that you've shown clearly. We have looked at our needs assessment. We're, very clear on what our data shows and where our gaps are and how we plan to meet those gaps and bridge those gaps with resources that we have.
Someone noted we can make a really good plan, but without funds we're limited as to what we can do. And I know Charlotte's spoken to that before. Please note that even if the program, even if the line item isn't included in the governor's budget or if it gets taken out, the important thing is to think about what you do have and leveraging what you do have available. And some of the most successful programs nationally have been the ones that haven't received automatic funding. Think about the school readiness efforts, for example, that are already taking place. Yes, money does make things easier. We all know that. But there are many things that could be leveraged that were already leveraged. I know Charlotte gave examples in the last webinar about some of the great things that some of the counties have been doing already. Will you be able to do that to that extent at first? Maybe not. But there are other ways of looking at funding. One of the things that we are going to be working with the Office of Federal Programs is creating a guidance document for federal spending. Right now, Universal Pre-K has a guidance document available that looks at Title I spending, and we're going to be expanding that document and have that available in the spring to support early learning spending as well, to cover those additional grades as well. So that's something that we'll definitely let you all know as soon as it's available as well. Okay, thank you for that suggestion, Nancy. We're trying to figure out the best way and get consensus about how to, best work and make sure that the county contacts have what they need. So thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, the recommendation was that it might help to have some regional face-to-face meetings for the county contacts. Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Someone commented, thanks for letting this be flexible and individualized. Of course, this needs to be meaningful for your county to your team.
Right. That was one thing that we were very committed to, was not coming in with the plan.
Right,
right. Counties, because counties are so different across the state, and we really want to honor the work that's going on there already and be supportive of what you see as gaps and issues that you're trying to address.
Brenda Clark had the question, once plans are completed, is it possible to somehow share the plan ideas districts have designed? Charlotte, is that possible?
I think that's a super idea, and that's what I mentioned a little earlier. Some of the other people on county teams, they helped me as we reviewed plans from other communities across the nation. So that certainly could be an activity that we could engage in, where we just, exchange plans and give each other feedback on, what we see, anything that might have been missed, some areas to strengthen, or things that are there that are really good,
Yeah.
really strong points.
That's a good idea.
It was helpful for us reading another plan. We certainly didn't feel like experts. I feel like we're kind of the newbies to the national campaign, but it was so helpful to read their plans, because I started getting ideas, even for our own states and our own state and counties too. Yeah, that's great, Brenda. So, any other questions or comments to share? Those were great. Thank you for those. Do you have any samples or ideas or resources to share? Yeah, I'm assuming maybe you haven't seen what's on the website.
Maybe if you take them to the website, Charlotte,
yeah, let me
revisit that.
Let's
because
do that.
We've actually developed a lot of types of guidance, toolkits that you could utilize as you develop your plan, and to help support you, looking even all the way back as to your community engagement and the partners and the unique resources that they may have that you would be able to leverage and collaborate with.
Okay, let me go ahead and go to the website just so you can see again how to get there. When you go to the the West Virginia Department of Education page, you'll see we have the logo right here on the front. When you click on the logo, that takes you to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading website. Now, specific to your role is under the Campaign tab. And when you go to the Campaign tab, we have resources for each of the components, but here's where the resources are that we've been using for the webinars under the System of Support. This is where you'll see the webinars that we've done for each step of the plan.
And also note that under steps 1, 2, and 3, you're going to see 2 webinars. It's the same webinar. I know we've talked about this before, but sometimes the YouTube-based webinar, the first link, I believe, is not always accessible in the school building. So our developer reposted it on the internal department site to make sure everybody could get it. So those are not separate webinars.
Right. Yeah, and then by the end of the day today, we'll have step 4. We'll have the implementation toolkits for the school readiness, extended learning, and attendance posted on here, as well as this webinar that we've done today. But also don't forget, there are other websites. The National Campaign's website is grade-level-reading.net. This has, a lot of resources that are available to anybody, but then there's the secret member site, which is the GLR Huddle, Grade Level Reading Huddle. When you go to this website, these have resources that are more specific to each of those components from national partners, as well as when you go under this resources page, you have a whole section on funding. There are all kinds of national companies and organizations that are offering funding to support literacy that are available to you. And this is a great resource, for you to use. When you go to the GLR Huddle website, you do have to register, but it's free. It's, it doesn't require anything else other than they just want to know where people are participating across the nation, where the participation is as far as the campaign.
Now, Charlotte, will they indicate that they're part of the West Virginia campaign?
They do. Yeah, there's actually a tracking mechanism that we have that just takes the information so we know who's logged in and can offer support to them as, you know, as they indicate they have a need in a certain area. Good question.
And Nancy noted, I think the PowerPoint you have on there is great. I'm using it with community groups. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay. Again, this is my contact information. I always include my cell phone, and I'm not kidding. Call me. I'm more than happy to help you with anything that you need. And then the last thing, if you would, please, even if you can do that right this minute, go to the survey just to give us feedback on this webinar, as well as this is a good opportunity to say, here's what we need in the future, just like Nancy just requested, or Brenda, Nancy, someone just requested that we have face-to-face meeting with the county campaign leads. That kind of information is really helpful for us to know how to support you as we move forward. Any other questions, comments? I'm going to leave the link up so you have time to type it in and go complete the survey. But if there are no additional questions, we will, again, it will stay open, but we will end the webinar now. Thank you all so much for your time and participation.